Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, and it is time for the patch 16.2 rundown. Yes, the 5 weeks of winter is over, and we are on to the next patch. And as always, I'm going to be joined by Tim, our head of live. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back. I've been itching for a new patch after 5 weeks of dinosaurs
Nice.
and pirates and
Now,
everything. Oh
before
my.
we
It
jump into the patch real quick, since it's been a while, how was Paris? Do you enjoy the Paris Open?
was a lot of fun. I think the last event I went to for TFT was the Vegas Open, and they had a smaller venue the first time, and so I was completely blown away by the venue this time. It really felt like TFT Con, and I met
Nice.
a lot of fun people, saw a lot of fun TFT, learned a lot, and then as Set 16 happens, the meta shifted entirely in a week.
Into dinosaurs. Nice.
Yeah, where's my Barons and my Annies that everyone was afraid of?
True.
Dinosaurs.
True. I do get a nice "I told you so" on the dinosaur though.
Mhm.
Piltover, it's pretty good. So anyway, we're finally here. We're at a patch now. I tweeted about this briefly, but one of the things to note about this patch is that our branch cut happened before the break. So we were able to do stuff before the break that we'd planned, but anything that happened after the break, we were kind of limited to only micro patch changes. So that meant no like text changes. We can't do system changes, no unlock condition changes, anything that required localization, all off the table for this patch. We're going to save a lot of those bigger changes for 16.3. That being said, I still think this is a nice chunky patch that you guys are going to be happy with. Tim,
Yep.
any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think 16.2 and 16.3 are going to be the two biggest patches remaining in the set, and I think after that we should be in that steady state where
Yep.
people are free to explore and discover, and everything should be in a close enough spot.
Yep. Cool. Well, let's dive right in here. First off, on the encounter side, we just have one new encounter that we were planning with, all the Gwen stuff going on, all the cool Gwen cosmetics, and that is a Gwen encounter. And the way this one works is after each carousel for the first 3, Gwen will also gift you an extra random component and a pair of scissors that cuts items into components. So it gives you the ability to like slam items, then break them apart. You'll probably see a lot of best in slot items on this encounter because people will be able to use that and make that into what they're looking for. We pulled out of the Draven, Lysandra, and Teemo encounter and a couple others. You can see here the numbers, but it'll be about 6%, so should be a fun new encounter to play with.
Yeah, TFT always needs more Gwen, so improvement.
True. People do like Gwen. I do see a lot of chibi Gwens in my games. Cool. All right, on the trade side, Bilgewater, the 2-cost price is going to go up by just a little bit. This is mostly to slow down the tempo around things like Graves early on. Over time, people who really started to optimize Bilgewater really understood the power of Graves in particular. We're just slowing this down a little bit. The other big thing I think we saw change was once the Lucky Doubloon got nerfed, everyone realized quite how good Captain's Brew is. And it turns out being able to 20% chill the entire enemy team for 3 seconds, pretty good, especially in the late game. So Captain's Brew is going to get its debuff duration nerfed, as well as its AD and AP. I still think this item is going to be very, very good. Again, with the rate TF Cass, who's the normal user of this, it'll still be really solid. And then Dead Man's Dagger. We didn't want to go too hard on Bilgewater right now, and so this is the one item we think was a little strong. But otherwise, yeah, anything to add on Bilgewater here?
Yeah, I think you've probably talked about it a lot, but this set has a lot of deep things, and we saw Piltover get innovated and refined over the holiday break. Bilgewater itself changes every 2 weeks on the optimal path, so there's a lot here. So we don't want to fidget too much because there's a lot of things to people to explore. And I think on Dead Man's Dagger, I think the other tank items are really good, but Dead Man's Dagger specifically we felt was like suppressing MF a little bit too much, and MF is one of those 4 costs that we really want to shine outside of the trade. So pulling some power from the trade, putting it into MF, so you can actually have one more 4-cost 80 unit to play around with.
Nice. Okay. I'll power through the rest on this page here. Ionia, there's a lot of different paths here. What I'll say is that we kind of look at the XP one as sort of like the baseline. It's a pretty solid one, and we want to get all of them to be about that level. And to that end, what we needed to do was Prosperous, the one that everyone loves, the gold one that seems a little strong. We don't mind that being the fun like Econ one, but it also can't have all that power on top of it, so the 3 and 5 gets nerfed there. Transcendence, this is the reroll one. Generally, we didn't like how exciting it is to finally 3-star something. You're like, I 3-star and like, ooh, I gained 10 AD and AP. Who cares? So basically, this is meant to be a slight nerf to the baseline, but when you 3-star something in here, because this is supposed to be a clear sign to play like Yasuo, maybe even Ahri, It's a bigger bump, and so this should actually be a buff to when you 3-star. And then the other one that was pretty low was the Spirits one. This is basically the casting one. We made the baseline a little better to like we didn't want to nerf this. Well, you see the red mark here, but 3-4-5 looks a lot better than 4-4-5. And so the baseline HP is meant to be sort of a buff, so that all levels are actually kind of being buffed here. And the 7-piece should be a lot more exciting. The only other one not talked about here is the Blade Master one. Honestly, it just kind of fell below the line. We think 3 Blade Master is pretty solid for especially Yunara. But 5 and 7 right now, we didn't want to act on quite yet. And then finishing off this slide real quick, Juggernaut 6-piece, just kind of below the line in terms of other defensive classes. So that's going to get a very, very slight buff here. You can see these numbers are incredibly tiny. Shadow Isles is another one where the 4 and 5 just really isn't worth running. And again, we're swinging somewhat on the champions as well, so we didn't want to swing too hard on the trait. Very light buff here to the trait itself. And then the last one is Piltover. Now, obviously, Piltover, T-Hex, etc. We'll get into some of that later. But the big one here is the 2-piece, the Electrical Overload. Just like the combination of this going off and the T-Hex going off, it feels like your boards get deleted. Even early, it's just a lot of power with that flat 100. So we're lowering it to a flat 50. It'll still be quite good, but it shouldn't be quite as dominant early. So.
Yep, and that Electrical Overload will make it a little bit less powerful late game when it's only hitting backliners and used for assassinating backliners. It's meant to be more of like a generic damage output to help those burst crack the front line, not so much, oh, get Diana that extra 150 HP. She needs to kill your backliner in one cast.
Yep. Cool. Any other things to add on this slide?
No, I think you got it.
Cool. All right, Ixtal. Ixtal is in an interesting spot, and this is kind of like Bilgewater. I think there's a lot of development being figured out how to play it, but there were a couple obvious things we wanted to hit right away for now. The first one is that there's a 550 cash out in particular that's frankly just too good. It's even better than the 625 cash out, might even be better than some of the 700 cash outs, just because it gives you that guaranteed Brock 2 and like a 3-star Nico or a 3-star Milio. It's just way too good. So we decided to keep the 3-star like Nico and Milio aspect of it, but you're not going to get the 2 duplicators. Instead, you're going to get a completed item anvil. This is meant to be a nerf to that 550 cash out. The difference between the 2 550s was massive. And then there were 2 missions in particular, 2 quests that were out of line, I'd say, in each direction. The first one was if you high rolled on 2-1, you got the lose 10 combats in a row. You would hit that 550 cash out on 3-7. That was game winning. It was just so early, things like that. It's still going to be good because this is one of the riskier ones. If you screw it up, you just are down everything. But 500 versus 550, so that if you want some of the good rewards, because 550 is where they start really ramping up, you're still going to have to do more than just 3-7. You might have to then do a couple play Nico for a round or kill a couple units or whatever to get the good stuff. And then the other one was the play 3 Ixtal for 17 rounds. That one was basically impossible. It was really hard to do. And even when you did, it was only for 500. So what we've done is we've changed it to play 3+, so you can play more if you want. Small change here. But also for 13 rounds, which puts this right at 4-3. So you cash it out on 4-5, which is much more realistic. If anything, I actually think this is going to be quite strong now because you can do this while win streaking. You can tempo into this. It should be pretty good. So don't sleep on this one. I think this one just got a lot better. And then real quick to finish the slide, Noxus is pretty obvious. The 5 and 7 piece have been basically unplayable for a while. So they're going to get more Omnivamp, more health, and the 7 piece is going to cast more often. So this should help 5 and 7 be more playable. Is this enough? I don't know. To be honest, I think we're always a little afraid to like buff something by 30% in a single patch. And they were pretty bad. So we're going to look into this and see if we can improve this. But no guarantees it's amazing quite yet. And then Zon we'll talk about a lot as we go through the champions. But in particular, the 3-piece durability is going to go up from 10 to 15%. This applies to all levels. And then the 5-piece heal is going to go from 25 to 30.
Yep, a couple points on here. Noxus Otacon is supposed to be your big beefy drain tank. We hit the mana like decently hard. We could maybe have gone harder, but the goal here is that he takes damage, he casts, he drains up, casts again. Right now he's only getting about 1 cast off a fight, which means you don't even see him. He doesn't do anything cool. So there's going to be this, and there's going to be a few unit buffs. And Zon, if you ever played 7 Zon, you look at your front line, you're like, what is going on outside of these 2 juggernauts? It's supposed to be beefy. give you that time to stall to build up Jinx, to build up Ziggs. So this durability buff is really going to help them out.
Sweet. All right. On the champion side, interestingly enough, there are no one-cost champion changes. I think they're actually in a pretty decent state. Nothing seemed super urgent to beat up right now. So let's move to 2 costs. Now, Bard, obviously, lost streak value of Bard, though we've seen this start to fall out of favor near the end here. But we want Bard to actually be powerful and like worth investing in, not just something you put in at 1 star, get a ton of value out of, and then get rid of. So specifically on stage 3 and 4, we're going to reduce the number of rerolls you get by 1. I don't think this will completely eliminate the strategy, and I'm okay with that. But we do want Bard to be something that you're actually considering investing in. And so again, he's going to get some spell damage buff as well to actually help him be a killer. If you get him with like 6 3-star units, you know, the Bard Scion comp, for example, in low elo, this is going to be a buff to that. So hopefully that helps Bard be good. Graves, like we talked about, Graves has secretly been the thing that really allows Bilgewater to snowball pretty hard. Didn't want to over nerf or anything like that, but he is going to lose 50 health and 5 base AD. Remember, base AD no longer affects the spell, so the spell's still going to hit just as hard, but those auto attacks are going to get nerfed a bit. Teemo 3 feels like the weak link of Yordle reroll. It just really isn't that great. So giving you more reason to invest in Teemo. So Teemo 3 is going to get a 10% buff to the spell and a little bit more to the dot damage. Tryndamere, this has been one of the other, I think, misses of the previous patch. Tryndamere is really good, even on like 2-2. You get this guy with like 2 items on 2-2. He's hard to kill. One of the reasons he's hard to kill is his spell gives him a ton of durability, and he hits like a truck. So that spell durability is going to go down quite a bit, and he's going to get a pretty chunky nerf here. This is a 20% nerf. He's meant to be a really scary threat when he has like 80% AD and he's stacked it up, not literally on 2-2. The passive increased move speed thing is more just to remove bugs, frankly. The way he moves was causing a lot of issues here, and so by slowing that, it'll just be less buggy. And then finally, Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate is in a weird spot where he's actually quite good in the late game. Like a TF2 with, again, Captain's Brew, Morello, whatever, can hit the whole board. He's hitting 8 units with his spell. Really quite good. But he's kind of bad early. You hit a TF2 on 2-1, it's not that good. And so we wanted to buff up a part of him that makes sense, which is that passive damage. So every auto will be doing quite a bit more damage here to hopefully help TF and make up for some of the Graves nerf.
Yeah, you basically covered all of it. I think the only point left to add is that on the Bard note, we like these cool strategies. I think it's like another one of the cool things about set 16 that make people love it so much is that you can find your engine, power it up, build a whole new comp later on, and it really feels like you played a complete game of TFT. So our goal is definitely, whether it's Bard, whether it's Yordle, whether it's Ionia, to not kill it, but just make sure that there's other options that you can do to compete with it.
Yep. Sweet. Okay. On the 3-cost side, Darius. Darius has been one of the big underperformers of the set. I don't think I've seen a Darius on a board in ages. So he's going to get a pretty chunky buff here. 10 off his mana, so he'll cast more often. And when he does cast, it's going to heal even more. So he'll hopefully be quite scary. Good stuff. Draven. Draven's weird. It's funny. Jinx was meant to be the like ramp up champion that once she ramps up does insane amounts of damage. Draven was a better Jinx than Jinx. Draven in early fights doesn't actually do that much, but once he gets his axes going, does a lot. Like he is very scary at the end of the fight. We tried to shift that power a bit, so he'll actually be a little better at the start of the fight, but quite a bit worse at the end of the fight, if that makes any sense, just so he's not quite so warped like Jinx is supposed to be. So buff to his base AD, nerf to the axes, should make him better. Kobuko and Yumi, there was a bug we found where it was the spell was healing twice. And so obviously if we fix the bug, he's half as good. That's not good. So we're buffing the spell back up so that it works about as intended. This is meant to be basically neutral. So this should not be a nerf or anything like that. Okay, Jinx. This is one of the big ones. Jinx had a lot of problems. Like we had one of our better scripters look into Jinx and dig in, and it was rough. There were a lot of bugs. I'm sure you've experienced them where she just would stop attacking, or sometimes it wouldn't trigger all 3 of the attacks if the attack speed got high enough, or if a target died, it caused a lot of issues. We've rescripted it completely. This will make her a lot more consistent. Now, there are some interesting things about her as we sim this a bit, where it's like She still requires, enough time to shoot her 3 attacks. So attack speed, weirdly enough, is like not quite as valuable once she gets going, but she still does a lot of damage. And then Tim and I simmed this, and we found this to be a pretty good number here. She's going to do a lot more damage. The way it works is like for the first 10 to 15 seconds of combat before she does damage, she'll be half as good as a Draven, maybe less. But man, once she procs, she will hit like a truck. And if she lives 25 seconds, she's probably going to look OP. So what I fully expect is there's going to be a bunch of times where people are going to show their like fights that went into overtime where Jinx did 20,000 damage with a Jinx 2 and people go, oh my God, she's OP. That's kind of what she does. But she'll be a playable unit. The trick to beating her is kill her quick. And then lastly, LeBlanc. LeBlanc is another one of these champions. And so yes, this is Noxus, Draven, Noxus, Darius, and LeBlanc buffs. But LeBlanc was another one that like really just wasn't doing anything. If you've ever tried investing into her and you want your LP back, you can email me. No, I'm just kidding. But this is a pretty chunky buff to help get her to be as powerful as someone like Ahri. So it's kind of the benchmark here.
Yeah, if you're going to put in the hoop of unlocking a champion, they should probably not be worse than a generic champion.
Yeah.
And I think this slide is a pretty good place to bring up one of the really good points about set 16 that made a lot of things feel more powerful is that our combat pacing is actually quite good outside of certain boards like T-Hex or Diana. But stage 4 and 5 fights often go 20 to 28 seconds, which is where we see these ramping champions like Draven shine when they start only throwing axes, and where champions like Jinx should shine if you build a good front line. And her failing in these environments is really like kind of like a big red flag for us of like, why is Jinx not doing better than Draven here? So
yep,
that's a good meta point.
Yep. I think if there's one thing, by the way, is we'll keep an eye on Jinx. If there's one thing that like I would say is at risk, like, you can hold us responsible. We think we tried to get her in a good spot, but she's going to have some sharp reactions. Like I think even during our playtesting, there were sharp reactions when she pops off. Like, so let us know, but definitely we'll keep an eye on this one very closely.
Yep, she's a unique champion. She scales off things that are not just herself, right? How good your front line is,
yep,
how long she got the cast, things like that.
Yep, cool. All right, 4 cost. Ambessa. This is, yes, another Noxus buff. So if you want to play Noxus, now is hopefully the time. This is also why we didn't go quite as hard on the trait. So, but Ambessa is going to slam a little harder. Hopefully Ambessa should be able to compete with other champions. All right, Diana. This one's tricky. Obviously, I think Diana she's not necessarily the like most OP thing or anything in this patch, but man, she can be very unfun. We've had this paradigm before with Akali, and yeah, she doesn't drop aggro like Akali, but it turns out when you have a spell shield that has no mana lock, and you can just constantly be in the shield stating, which basically means you're invulnerable, that's almost worse. So for now, what we're doing, since we can't do any like big reworks or anything like that, is we're lowering her AD, which makes her less good with Titans, because she'd actually do a surprising amount of physical damage. I've even seen some people running Darkened Scythe on her just because of that fact. So that'll get nerfed. And that spell shield that still has no mana lock is going to get nerfed drastically. This will make her a lot more fragile. If you target her, she should be able to get knocked down. Do we think this is perfect? Probably not. There might be some more work to do in a future patch, but this gets us at least a lot closer. And, if Diana's not S tier for a while or even A tier, it might be okay for a while. Kai'Sa, AP form is actually in a really good spot. We think it's one of our good like baseline forecasts. But the AD form has been suffering a little bit. Not by a lot or anything like that. So it's going to get a buff to the spell damage here. You have to look at this, by the way. This doesn't look that big where you're like, oh, 38 to 42. But it is more than a 10% buff. And typically when we talk about percentage buffs, like 5 is a small buff, 10 is pretty chunky. So this is a big buff to Kai'Sa, even though the number might look deceptively small. So something to think about. Misfortune actually similarly, by the way, is another 10% buff to Misfortune as well. We talked about some of the nerf to items, and Tim alluded to it earlier. We want to make Misfortune actually be able to be playable outside of Bilgewater, not just rely on the Bilgewater items to do all of her damage. So that should hopefully be better. And then lastly is Callista. Callista's a weird one. We definitely just wanted to give her a generic buff, so attack speed buff and a little mana down so she can cast more often. The last change you could debate if it's a buff. I think it generally is, though. But basically what happens is right now she throws a bunch of spears. 50% of them hit her primary target, and then the other 50% are divided amongst 2 targets. what can often happen is those get like overkill damage or on the wrong, like you hit some, itemless Cho'Gath and it ends up being wasted. By having that number increase to 3 extra targets, so it goes from 3 to 4 total, basically there's less likeliness of wasted damage, which should hopefully help her be more efficient in like killing armies and not wasting a bunch of spellcast damage, and hopefully be a buff. But it does mean it'll be harder to burst something down, so that's why it's not marked as a true buff.
Yep, but these are all pretty straightforward. Basically, we want all of our forecasts to feel like you can play them, and I think over the holiday break, people kind of narrowed down as you do with the 5-week patch of these are only the 3 or 4 forecasts you want to play with. And I think there's a bit more future work to be done in 16.3 about how long people are playing with forecasts, because I think it's a little short right now. People don't stay on 8 too long. Some people don't even like playing on 8. They roll on 7, which is great. But then they roll on 7 to skip 8 and go 9, which is a longer term problem we're going to be looking at.
Yep. Cool. And then on the second page, Seraphine. This is another one where if you've ever tried to play Seraphine carry, I'm sorry. She can do some okay damage, but primary carry, not so much. She is meant to be a 4-cost carry. So again, pretty big buff here. And again, we talk about percentages, 40 going to 55. That's a 30% buff. That is a big buff. So definitely don't sleep on this. But to compensate, we did nerf the spell heal a bit, so you're not getting quite as much free utility. There were certain comps, Tim, I know you were simming, that were like, she was actually doing a lot of utility as well. And so in order for her to be a carry, can't really do that. So
yep, she's a disruptor. She has heal. She has Piltover. The comp that Mort's alluding to is everyone's favorite PvE comp. Disruptor Seraphine with Juggernauts.
True. Speaking of Juggernauts, Singed. Singed obviously fell off from his PvE heydays. And I think part of it is like even just his design. Like we wanted him initially to be like this damage dealer, but he was also incredibly durable through both Zaun and Juggernaut. So that kind of ended up just being a really bad thing. He's also incredibly bound to Morello. Like the difference between this guy with and without a Morello is like wild. So we talked about how we wanted him to be a tank. That's like a utility tank, right? He runs around distracting things, does some damage with Morello, but not a primary carry. This guy shouldn't be equipping a BT. He should be equipping tank items. So we've changed his role to a tank. So he will actually be a tank. The move speed here is not listed as a buff because it's just to compensate from the fact that fighters get inherent move speed. So we took that away and then gave it back. So he'll be the same. Same with the mana per second. This is to compensate for the fact that he's a tank now, and he'll be able to generate from taking damage, which means he'll actually generate more mana. And then his heal is going to be able to heal a bit more. Again, didn't want to go too crazy here with the Zaun buffs and the Jink buffs and things like that. If we need to do more with Singed, we will, but that's why that's the case. Skarner, pretty self-explanatory. This dude's a beast. He's a great tank. Probably doesn't need to CC 3 people for 2.5 seconds. That's just abysmal for any melee unit that happens to not have a Quicksilver. Trying to make that stun a bit more fair. Yunara, this is another one that's like really obvious. She's been incredibly strong throughout the entire patch. Probably the dominant 4-cost carry. There's an item nerf that will affect her as well, which we'll talk about, but she gets a nerf here. Nothing too crazy here, but the bigger one is actually the reduction per enemy. So at least like she'll be able to still kill the first target she hits better, but she won't also snipe your backline while she's doing it, which should get her down to, again, closer to like AP Kaisa levels is the goal. And then the last one is Veigar. You'll notice we're nerfing Veigar, which I'm sure if you're like any normal player, you're like, why? What? Veigar's not even that good. Why are we nerfing Veigar? Veigar had a bug, which we'll talk about in the bug fixes, where his spell could miss if the target was moving even a little, which really was a lot of time. Like you would be shocked at the amount of damage you've missed. Tim, I know you have a story about a Veigar 3 game you lost because the enemy was walking. But when we fixed that bug, which I'm so glad we did, he's actually insane. And so we did have to slightly compensate nerf for this bug fix. So,
yep, another thing that's going to be coming up is the Yordle 5 cost is also getting buffed, and we want to make sure their power difference is where it should be, so that the 5 cost Ziggs has his place to shine in fights, and it's not just, oh, I'll just put items on Veigar, because why would I ever itemize Ziggs?
Yep, makes sense. Cool. Yunara, by the way, we never, like, I know a lot of people were talking about Yunara being bugged. As far as we can tell, she's not bugged, right?
Yeah, we did a fair amount of investigation in this. I know there's reports of like, oh, she gets more crit chance than intended. We haven't seen that. People are pointing to her like delta with IE. That can be explained by just her kit inherently wants to
Yep.
be skewed toward IE pretty well, so that doesn't give us any clear indicator. But so far as we can tell, we haven't seen Yunara have any drastic bugs with crit.
Cool. Okay. All right, 5 cost. Aurelian Soul. This champion, if you can put it together, like let's say you hit it really early and you hit it at 3-5 and you have the perfect items and you get casting and you get stacking, you might get third if you're lucky.
He might be Yunara.
You know, just definitely not feeling like a 7 cost. So I think there's, again, a lot more work to be done here that we couldn't do in the time frame. But for now, this guy's getting a chunky buff. This is a massive buff. I want this guy to be, you put him on your board, and even before you start building stacks, like that spell should hit hard. Now, it'll have all the same weaknesses, which is like you're going to have to cast a few times to get to their back line. You're still going to need casting items. I don't think this solves all of Aurelian Soul's problems, but we are swinging really hard here. This is, 25, 30% buff here, which is just insane. And so hopefully this guy is more playable. That's the hope. Baron. Baron's actually getting a light slap on the wrist. Baron has fallen out of favor. And we do think Baron right now is kind of tied to like certain economy augments, certain, if everyone like encounters like Scuttle Puddle, things like that, which we'll probably have to address in 16.3. So we didn't want to have to go too hard now and then undo it if we do any changes that make this true. And there are some augments being removed that kind of nerf this as well. But he is still doing a lot of damage, and so does get a nerf to his spell. More at 1 star, light at 2 star. Kindred, this is another champion I think might need some bigger work in 16.3. But for now, is just going to be a little less of a carry because Kindred provides a lot of utility. 2 Quick Striker is just one of those really good splash traits. You get that for free. Her spell shuts down so many things, and that's going to last a little bit less long. But Kindred, kind of don't really want Kindred in literally every comp, and so that's going to be a nerf to Kindred. Lastly, and this was a fun conversation Tim and I had yesterday, I think my initial impression was like Kindred is better than Lucian and Senna all the time. But as we looked at the data, Lucian and Senna were outperforming Kindred by a pretty large margin, which was like, whoa, that's crazy. But as we dug into it, we found that the items that were always doing well with Lucian and Senna were Shojin and Utility. Shojin Morello, Shojin Red Buff, and yes, I said Morello, which was also a little bit of a red flag. It turns out the Black Mist debuff that they were providing is giving a lot of value. In a normal fight, if you actually watch, your backline's armor can get reduced by as much as like 20, 25 in some extreme cases. And that's even without the Lucian actually hitting it and proccing it. It's just sitting there draining a long time. That's more than Fiddlesticks on top of the aura they already provide on top. Like, it's a lot. So again, this is something we might have to do bigger in 16.3. But for now, we're at least going to lower the Black Mist duration a lot so that the odds you going minus 25 get closer to like minus 15 in a long fight or minus 12 in a long fight. And so this should sort of nerf a lot of the invisible power that she was providing just by being on your board.
Yep, the kind of story here of the high-end AD comps is they're great utility units and they're great carries as well, which seems like so far above most other forecasts. And Yunara is only able to compete, 1, because she was quite strong, and 2, you can also put these units next to her. And that's a good point as well for Baron, in the fact that Baron has fallen off because 3 of the most common endgame champions are legendary units that can kill Baron really quick, which is Lucian, Kindred, and the Dinosaur.
Yep. Speaking of the Dinosaur, we're buffing. No, I'm just kidding. We're not buffing it. Okay, T-Hex. I think obviously T-Hex was the biggest outlier of the patch. By the end of the patch, you would see, at least at the higher elos, you would see 1 to 4 per lobby. It was pretty bad. And so we really took a look at T-Hex, and so I think everyone had the sort of obvious way you play it, right? Reroll Caitlyn, hit the Caitlyn, spike it in, put it in, all that good. But if you actually like played T-Hex a lot of other ways, where it's like maybe you eat an Ornn or you eat a Vi, actually not that insane. And so we wanted to be careful to not nerf T-Hex too hard or nerf the wrong thing here. The first one was pretty obvious though, which is the mana regen you get from eating a caster. 3-star Caitlyn was giving you 12 mana regen. That was bonkers. That was wildly, wildly bonkers. We were way off on that. Oops. That's getting nerfed to 245. This is a massive nerf to specifically this version, and that's intended. You're still going to get a lot of the health from eating a 3-star Caitlyn, which is good, but you don't need to be casting long enough to literally delete entire teams. That's just not okay. The other thing is that T-Hex is already really durable, usually has like 4,000 health. It didn't need an 800 health shield when it casted. That's not okay. So when it casts, it's going to lose a lot of that shield, so that if you can actually get on the T-Hex, you can kill it. That's a good thing. Then even with all of that, we looked at it and we're like, well, this is still actually doing a little too well. So the spell does get a bit of a nerf. And then the other thing is that the fall off damage is also being nerfed. So all of this is to say these are very, very big nerfs. The hope here is it's still powerful when you do it, but it's not literally the kind of thing you can force from a single Caitlyn, you know? So it might go back to like the way I used to play it before it got popular is the only good way to play it, things like that. So we'll see, but these are the T-Hex nerfs. And then real quick, Ziggs was another one that just this champion may as well not have existed this set. So he's getting some big buffs here. Passive damage is going up, especially at 2-star. So going to be able to do a lot more damage with his autos. The attack speed is going to go up as well. And he'll be throwing those giant bombs that do a lot of damage. Ziggs, I think, now is going to be the kind of champion that, like, he's going to shock you on the damage meters. If you're one of those people that look at damage meters to quantify how good a champion is, he'll do 18,000, 20,000 damage in some fights, and you'll be like, whoa, this guy's busted. But he might still struggle to kill key targets. So we'll see.
Yep, and I think for people who are interested in this type of thing, how Mort kind of explained it is a really good way we approach problems like T-Hex, which is, what do we want T-Hex to be doing? Do we want him one-shotting your backline in one cast? Probably not. Do we want T-Hex, who's a 2-range melee unit, to be building 3 damage items and no healing? Probably not. So what do we do to get him in that spot where he's doing the things we want him to be doing, which is maybe a bruiser mix, maybe a flex what you eat, and things like that? It's like, well, let's give out how much innate damage and durability he gets just from eating a 3-star caster, which is the easiest one to get. And that's how we ended up with this solution.
Yep. Cool. All right. Okay, emblems. I'm not going to sit here and read all of these, but here's the TLDR. I've been over this in the Monday morning meta report like for 5 weeks now. All of our emblem augments are not great. If you've gone to a carousel that had 2 spats and a pan, usually the last 2 people are like, darn, I have to take a spat or a pan, you know? And so that's not a great spot. We want spats and pans to be things that you're actually excited about. And so for now, what we're going to be doing is giving all of the emblems quite a bit more power innately so that they're actually like, you don't feel like you're down an item slot for equipping them, and you can get more power. And so all the origin emblems are getting a lot more stats here. You can pause the video and read these through if you want. I think the one we went light on here was Ixtal emblem. We didn't want this to have like 500 health, and then you're like, I can't lose with it now. That feels bad. But everything else is getting a bunch more stats so that emblems should be an exciting thing, and you're like, I want this. Yay.
Basically nailed it. Verticals are a little bit weaker this set as well as the power of the legendaries. So this is trying to bring up that floor a little bit, so you're definitely not taxed as much for taking a spat, which is the cool gold item that you can cook with.
Yep. And we'll see if this is enough. I think what you should be looking forward to is next week's Monday morning meta report. If all of those the bottom augments are still flexible and whatever, you know, and earths, whatever, then we'll have to swing even harder. But wanted to go hard, but not too hard this patch. And classes, same thing here. Again, I'm not going to sit here and read all of these. Some of these get more stats. Some of these, like Bruiser Emblem, were actually not that bad already. So we didn't want to swing too hard on the ones that were like already quite good. Others even had their bonus effect buffed a little bit, like Vanquisher Emblem can drop more gold. Quick Striker Emblem gets more heal, things like that. But again, generally the same philosophy here, which is every emblem is getting buffed so that they're more exciting. Good stuff. Cool. All right. Other items. This is a big one, and this is why, like, if you didn't see like bigger Yunara nerfs or Vayne nerfs or things like that, Kraken's Fury is an item that when it reached its cap was just way too good. Like the difference between a Deathblade and a capped Kraken's Fury was just too wide. And I know you're thinking, well, yeah, Kraken's Fury has to ramp. It doesn't take that long to ramp because the ramp is tied to your auto attacks and a lot of the times pairs with Ginsu's. So ended up just being too good. And the fact that it gave attack speed was like always good on everyone who wanted it. So the Ginsu's Kraken pairing on everything. We don't expect that to change. I expect Kraken Ginsu's to still be Yunara's best in slot with IE, but do they need that extra 30% attack speed? No. And so for people like Vayne and Yunara, this is a 15% attack speed nerf to a lot of these champions. This is, we think, one of the biggest changes that puts AD and AP back in comparison. There is no Ginsu's nerf, and so if you've ever been in the situation where you're like running Ginsu's without Krakens, I think you felt the difference that you're quite a bit weaker. I think a lot of the item deltas also show this. The fact that Vaynes were often running 2 Krakens, kind of a sign. But this is one of the bigger changes of the patch, and I think probably the most meta-shifting change as far as like a systemic change. Beyond that, artifacts, Aegis of Dawn and Dusk kind of underperforming. They're going to proc a little more often, hopefully make them a little better. Kappa Juice, this one actually I'm a little nervous on. Kappa Juice, when it works, is really, really good. When it doesn't, it's terrible, shocking. That's kind of how these work. This will help it be good more often, and so who knows? You might see a lot of really strong champions with like 60 hats running around, but Kappa Juice will be a bit better. Darkened Scythe, this was another really bad one that I think started to warp the meta the last week or two of the patch. But turns out Darkened Scythe had a bug where it could crit. Item effects are never supposed to be able to crit. So you could run like IE plus this on a Yasuo 3, and it was doing insane amounts of damage, which would then proc a kill, which would trigger itself and do insane amounts of damage. Very snowball-y, very problematic. This will nerf that pretty heavily. And then finally, Void Gauntlet is another underperforming artifact that's going to get a small buff here.
Yep, these are just the new artifacts that we've added. We don't want to bait people into clicking the shiny new thing and it not really paying off. So, small buffs to these.
Yep. Anything else with Kraken? Did I cover it pretty well?
No, you covered it pretty well.
Okay, cool. All right, Radiant items. Now, if you remember when we launched the set, we said every Radiant item is going to be double their baseline. Great, cool. And in fact, Radiant Kraken's Fury gets a nerf, so it's double its baseline. Cool. But what we also said was then we'd look at the stats and see, okay, does anything else need adjustment from here? This is our first pass at that. And so the first thing we're seeing is, wow, a lot of these defensive items, and I predicted things like Dragon's Claw for sure, but even like Warmogs being bad, that feels lame. Defensive items are not as good right now, so we're going to buff them slightly. Nothing wild here. We're not swinging for the fences, but Radiant defensive items are mostly all getting buffed because they're kind of the weak ones right now. So.
Yep. Just bringing them up just a tad where there's no like clear baits and, oh, I didn't read the stats and know that this was the bad Radiant item. We don't want that happening. Click the one that looks cool and fun and you'll do fine.
Yep. All right, augments. Not a lot of augment changes this patch. Again, part of this being the micro patch limitations, but we did want to make some big swings. Some of this was also stuff we'd done before the break, so you'll see some of that in there as well. But overall, here's what we're going through. So Axiomata, this one has to be disabled for now. We had done the localization work that we want to do to make this augment better, but not the actual implementation. So that'll come hopefully next patch. So for now, it's disabled. Right now, it's a bad choice anyway. So until we get it better, let's just get it out of the way. We did, however, for the silver ones, the actual ones that give you the hex, we made the backline ones always in a corner. Nobody liked getting them in the second or third spot. It just wasn't fun. They'll always pick a corner. It'll still be random, but like you'll actually get a corner, which is good. Bandle Bounty, these augments have an insane win rate, even at high elo, which is shocking considering like the trade itself isn't even really that good. And we did buff it a little bit. So I don't think we can leave the augments having that high of a win rate while also buffing the champions. So these are getting a slight gold nerf. Birthday Reunion has been one that's jumped in and out of that field of OP for a while now. Delaying how long you get the Thieves' Gloves will help keep it in line a little bit. Bronze for Life 2. This is one where the durability, especially when it gets up there to like 16, 18%, even at like 10% is like pretty insane. And durability is always one of those stats that you want a bunch of. So we're instead going to go with Armor and MR, just a healthier version. The other thing is like the math around durability is just a little weird when it stacks up, whereas Armor and MR is a lot healthier. We can give that to you flatly. That's good. All right, Growth Mindset. It's gone. Thank you. This is one like Baron. You know, we talk about like this augment has done some bad things. It's also how Robin beat me at Paris Open. So yeah, this is just me taking it out on Robin. Yeah.
Hey, my most fun games have been here. Breaking the game is fun.
It's true.
10 on 4-2.
But real talk, one of the main reasons we're actually disabling this is it creates a really bad optimization where what you're supposed to do is if you think there's a prismatic augment or even a chance of a prismatic augment, you're supposed to save up as much gold as possible until 4-2 so that you can hit that like 90 gold, proc this, and then spend a bunch at high value. That's not healthy. We actually do still want there to be a like plus XP augment just we need to do one that doesn't have a really lame optimization like this. So until we do that, this one's going to go away. Hexgate Travel's another one that I talked about on the Monday Morning Meta Report. This thing's insane, and as long as T-Hex values 3-star units over 2-star units, this will always be insane in my opinion. It allows you to hit those without having to pay any cost towards leveling up, and I think that's just not going to be okay, so we're just going to remove that. Soul Awakening has been another one that's like, even with a high pace of combat right now, this augment's still overperforming. So as we slow things down, it's going to get even better. So preemptively nerfing it. And then Trials of Twilight. This one, hopefully you should be taking this when you have at least one Xin Zhao already. Although I know a lot of people are taking it to try to finish their Lore Finder. But having another copy to hopefully get you to that 2-star Xin Zhao, to have a nicer early game, preserve some health, then hit the 3-star better, should hopefully buff it up a little bit. There's probably more work to be done here. We didn't want to go too crazy for now, but hopefully that helps. And that's the augment changes.
Yep, I think you nailed all of it.
All right. Now, oh God, do I have to read this?
We
we fixed a lot of bugs.
It's a long break. We weren't just sleeping.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of this was like the first week or two of the set launch while people were still in office and working. Most of what the team did was fix bugs as they were coming in. So we did a bunch of that. And then in addition, now we came back and also fixed a couple, so, all right, I'm going to go fast. And Tim, stop me if there's any that you really want to talk about. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Jinx's script. We already talked about this. She got rewritten. Vhagar, I've been talking about this one in the Monday Morning Reddit report for a while, but now works properly with blue buff. Great. Flexible is now using the correct augment icon. Cool. Warlord's Honor stat counter visual effects are now properly removed when a champion is benched. Okay. Hustler is now properly excluded from hedge fund and invested. Great. If a player has component buffet, min-max now gives anvils instead of random components. Cool. Thorn-plated armor now correctly increases Bramble Vest's damage in stage 3. Great. Fixed an issue where Radiant Ionic Spark was doing more damage than intended if the unit was holding more than one Radiant Ionic Spark and the player had the high voltage augment.
Can play the game now.
Yeah. All the games where you saw 2 Radiant Ionic Sparks are now fixed. If a player surrenders with the aura farming champion still locked, it now removes itself from the board and returns to the champion pool. Great. Vhagar, Misfortune, and Aurelian Soul's spell no longer miss if enemies move more than 1 hex away from the epicenter before the spell lands. This, I think, is a big one. We talked about it with Vhagar, but Misfortune and Aurelian Soul could also have it happen. Aurelian Soul was mostly in the Meteor phase, the 700 phase. But either way, these are slight buffs to these champions because the spells will stop missing, which is good. Silas' spell logic improved to more likely use Garen's spell when one unit is alive. Great. Fiddlestick's walking logic improved to better hit more enemies on average. This is a big deal. I think this one matters. There are times where Fiddlesticks will ult and you're just like, what are you doing, bro? This will help. Ixtal quest timing properly checks at the end of the combat phase. We still have more work to do on this. I know the inconsistencies around Ixtal are definitely a little frustrating, so we'll get to that when we can. Free rerolls from Trade Sector and Commerce Core now stack. Great. Lucky Gloves Plus properly grants its extra sparring gloves in Talker's Trials. Awesome. Deal 7,500 damage Ixtal quests now properly completes on away boards. There were times where if you died on an away board, it wasn't counting anymore. It was very weird, so that one's fixed. Wood Axiom no longer occasionally loses its bonus health at combat start. Great. Physical damage from Fizz's empowered attacks can now properly critical strike. Cool. Void mutation tooltips properly update when becoming supercharged. This is just a text change. This was already working fine. It was just the text. Lyssandra's overkill damage now applies when killing reviving units such as Zehen and Aatrox. This is a slight Lysandra buff for these cases where you would just lose damage. Wukong's clone now properly benefits from thorn-plated armor. So your triple thorn-plated armor Wukong will now proc in the clone state as well. Fateful finds charm from Xerath as VFX. Great. The Prismatic Ionia Enlightened Path properly grants XP. So if you ever had 10 Ionia and were level 9, you get XP still. Great. Cooking Pot no longer will grant stats to summons. Cool. Fixed an issue where server lag could occasionally cause Garen to heal the wrong amount. Great. Fixed an issue where selecting combat-based Ixtal quests during combat would cause them to not complete that round. Cool. Fixed a bug where T-Hex targeting was inconsistent. I know there was a lot of theories around how this worked. Hopefully T-Hex's targeting should work a lot better. T-Hex no longer fails to absorb his pilot under rare circumstances. Do we know what caused this? I never got to hear what caused this.
I didn't get to hear what caused it
Okay.
either.
We'll have to
Probably
look into
a variety of things. Yeah.
But hopefully it's fixed. Construct a companion no longer fails if the player has 2 copies of the unit on the rightmost slots of their bench. This one actually got reported to me a couple times. Glad it got fixed. Hextech Gunblade no longer breaks fizzes and powered attacks. This was a big one. I got hit by this one a couple times. And Yone can no longer revive Yasuo under rare circumstances. So there you go. A lot of bugs. And are there more? Yeah, we know there's more. It's like, this isn't all of them by any means. TFT is a complicated game, and there's 100 champions, and yeah, but we'll get to it.
Every patch is better.
Yep.
I hope.
Cool. I don't know about you. I'm excited for a new patch. I played a lot of games over the break, and so I'm ready for a new meta.
I mean, I'm always excited to play more TFT. More, come on.
True.
But yeah, a month of the same patch is a lot.
Yeah.
Even with 100 champions.
Yep. It's good though. It's generally good. The good news is, what I can tell you is the set has been pretty successful. So yeah,
it's always good.
Yeah, cool. All right. Any closing thoughts, Tim?
Nope. Just excited for it to come out.
Sweet. All right. Well, enjoy the patch. It does come out Thursday. This video should be going live on Tuesday, so you're watching it. It's possible all these changes end up on PBE Tuesday afternoon, so if you're really itching to learn it, check it out. I don't know that for sure, so wait for me to verify that Tuesday afternoon, but it might go there if you want to check it out. And then, like I said, it goes live Thursday, and you should be able to enjoy it from there. So, yeah. All right. That's going to do it for me. Until next time.
See you guys.
Take it easy.